been almost 10 years since I first stood before some of you and shared my story as a survivor for the very first time. It would be the first of many stories I would share with some of you. I have shared with you stories involving me being startled out of my sleep as a pillow that I once laid on for cover stripped me of my breath. As he laughed and just said, "Just joking, go back to sleep." I have shared stories of how a ride to work turned into an elbow that shattered my glasses, cutting my face, being thrown from the car and left for dead, while still getting up and walking the rest of the way to work as the fear of losing my job and triggering yet another assault taunted me. How a vacation to SeaWorld with my kids turned into a terror-filled prison sentence, and how I risked life and limb to escape after 8 long years. Tonight's theme is lighting the way, stories that honor and guide. And in truth, every one of you has a story that has and will guide another. Whether you're at the beginning of your journey as a survivor, the middle of your journey, or far removed from your last stand, these stories are powerful, and telling them gives us all of our power back. I must be honest though, there were times that I wondered about each story that I have shared and if they truly served their purpose. I wonder if any story was responsible for guiding me back towards the light. But most of all, what we all take from these stories. To answer that, it's important for us to understand what these stories have done. Domestic violence stories help us understand how to recognize the signs of abuse, the different forms of abuse, how family and friends can support a victim of domestic violence, and these stories often give us a snapshot of the resources necessary to assist each victim. In short, these stories raise our awareness. In order to resolve a problem, we must be aware of it. Then we can really make impactful progress towards eradicating domestic violence and other forms of abuse. Personally, the stories of others and even my own indicated to me a wealth of things, but no more important than the letting go of fear. Michel de Montaigne was quoted as saying, "A man who fears suffering is already suffering from what he fears." This quote helped me understand what most of my time in my abusive relationship looked like. I was stuck in a hole while being kicked, punched, dragged, and told I wasn't worth saving. Every attempt to get out this hole triggered yet another physical and emotional attack with no other intended goal but to continue to foster the overwhelming fear we've all been prisoners of. But in my case, someone else was fighting to get out of that hole once before, and I remembered her. I remember seeing her as a little girl. She was my aunt. Her name was Nora. She used to be a resident here in Las Cruces. She later moved to Texas and fought her way out of an abusive relationship of 20 years, right into her degree, right into becoming the corporate accountant for the Southland Corporation, which later became 7-Eleven Inc. She is now the head of ASCAP, and she leads thousands of women every year to safety, to success, scholastically, academically, financially. And her story was what gave me what I needed to walk out of my situation. It has been 15 years since the day I stayed up all night preparing to leave. I'd spent the 5 days prior memorizing the to-do list to remove any chance that he would find it. I put everything that I had already decided was going with me in the garage or the backyard. He came in as he did most days, drunk, high, and headed straight for the bed before bellowing for his routine food and beverage. I waited quietly out of the way as to not alert him as he began what typically was a 4 to 6 hour slumber. I took my car, parked in the same church parking lot that had once been me and my kids' residence on several nights. I jumped in the moving truck and I packed as quickly as I could for the next 4 hours. Tired, sore, sweating, and I barely escaped with my life, had it not been for yet another story that reminded me to unload and discard any bullets and weapons. I guess I was glad that finally his instincts were a step behind him, and his ego and his brutality. Either that or the weight of a loaded gun is hard to judge as you tear through the air seeking to obliterate your target. Either way, from this I found my answer. Stories help us understand our strength. Stories tell us we will break down before we break ground. Stories tell us that we do not have to answer another call for our surrender. The stories tell us that as the day bleeds into the nightfall, the last time we will taste the blood topped with drywall. The stories warn us to prepare for the other abusers, anxious to see you fall. The story prepares us for refusing to live in survival mode the rest of our lives. The stories remind us that everything that glitters is not gold. The stories fill us with the desire to be truly loved and the confidence to know that we deserve that love. The stories motivate us to love ourselves. These stories remind us that we never have to be anyone's victim again. They strengthen our resolve and remind us to never let our voice be silenced again. When I first told my story, I didn't set out to be a light to anyone. My journey was focused on healing, living, and just being free. But I wanted better for my children than to just have the wounded parts of me. I wanted to exhibit a different type of strength, other than being able to withstand a physical beating. I wanted to live a life knowing the power that they were blessed with, and how to purpose that power. I wanted them to be prepared to never find themselves where I once did. I wanted them to understand that there is more than 16 million people in the U.S. that suffer from domestic violence a year. Nearly 1 in 2 women and more than 2 in 5 men experience what we have experienced at some point in their lifetime. And if these numbers are alarming to you and question your math, let me share a tip with you for math and life. Always carry the one. And if each of us carry one after the other until there are no more victims left, then we will have authored the most beautiful story of all. Thank you, guys.